All right, we're going to be investigating slope and y-intercept. Okay, so how to find slope, how to find intercept, how to write the equation y equals mx plus b out, okay, and how to calculate slope and how to write an equation out. All right, so the first question is state the slope and the y-intercept. Okay, so hopefully you remember that the number in front of x is the slope. Okay, and the letter we use to represent slope is m. And the letter behind x or after x is the y-intercept. And the letter we use to represent y-intercept is the letter b. All right, so let's look at this first equation, y equals 4x minus 5. You're going to notice the number in front of x is 4. So my slope is 4. All right, the number after x represents the y-intercept. So the y-intercept in this question is negative 5. All right, so just try to remember the number in front of x is the slope. The number after x is the y-intercept. Okay, let's look at question B. Y equals negative x minus 6. Okay, this one you might think, oh, there's no number in front of x. All right, but you got to think there's always an imaginary 1 when there's a letter by itself. Okay, so in this case, my slope is negative 1. And the number after x is negative 6, which represents my y-intercept. Okay, now your slope and your y-intercept can always be any number. Okay, so if it's a fraction like question C, y equals 1 over 2x minus 5 over 2, the number in front of x is the slope. And the number after x, if there's a negative or a subtraction, you got to treat it as a negative 5 over 2 is the y-intercept. Okay, let's look at this last example. You see y equals 2x. Again, the number in front of x is the slope. So that one's easy. That's 2. And you're going to notice this question has no number after x. All right, like I said before, in math, it's weird. Sometimes when there's nothing there, it's a 1. Sometimes when there's nothing there, it's a 0. All right, in this case, when there's nothing after the x, it's a 0. Okay, so the y-intercept in this question is going to be a 0. It's just one of those rules that you kind of have to memorize. All right, so if it's a number in front of a letter or in front of a bracket, it's 1. But if it's after the letter, it's 0. All right, and that's how you find the slope from an equation and the y-intercept. Okay, let's look at question number 2 here. Question number 2 is the opposite. They're telling you what the slope is and what the y-intercept is, and you need to write out the equation. All right, so when you write out the equation, your answers always have to be in the form of y equals mx plus b, okay, where m is a number and b is going to be a number. Okay, sometimes that number is 0, sometimes that number is 1, but it's always going to be a number. All right, so in this question, they're telling me the slope is 7 over 2 and the y-intercept is 9. All right, you have to write y equals to get full marks. So this question, I'm going to write y equals, I know the slope is 7 over 2, so m is 7 over 2. Okay, I'm going to write x. That's just part of the equation. And then the y-intercept is positive 9, so I'm going to write plus 9. Now, if it's a negative 9, I just write minus 9. All right, and that's the answer to my question. Y equals 7 over 2x plus 9. All right, so let's try it with this one. They tell me the slope is negative 3 and the y-intercept is positive 3. So it's going to be y equals the slope, which is negative 3, x. And then the y-intercept is positive 3. So it's going to be plus 3. And that is my answer. Okay, so this one's a little bit tricky. The slope is 0, but the y-intercept is negative 3. So you might write this on your test. Okay, you cannot finish the question here. You can't have 0x as an answer. All right, so for this question, it's actually just going to be y equals -3. If you write that first line that I wrote, you're not going to get full marks. You're only going to get part marks. All right, you got to write this last step. Okay, it's kind of like a weird math thing. You can't write 0x or 0a or whatever letter in front of 0. Okay, this last one, the slope is 7, but the y-intercept is 0. For this one, you could write it like this, 7x, because that's the number. And then if you want to write plus 0 for this one, you can. All right, you're allowed to have this as an answer. You're allowed to write plus zeros at the end of a question. Okay, but if you don't want to, if you just wanted to write y equals 7x, you're also allowed to do this. All right, so technically, you can do that for this question. You're allowed to write the 0 for this one, but you don't have to. All right, and that is how you do this question. All right, now this last one's a little bit trickier. There is more work involved. We need to find the equation of this line, right? So usually the easier part to do is to find the y-intercept. Okay, so I need to find the slope, which is m, and then I need to find the y-intercept, which is b. All right, so I have this line that has these coordinates. The two coordinates are -2 and 6 up here. The other coordinates are down here, which is 2 and -2. Okay, and this line is going through the graph at this point. All right. This point is called the y-intercept right here. All right, that is the y-intercept where the blue line crosses the y-axis. And I just got to be careful because the y-axis is a line that goes up and down. All right, so when I'm doing the y-intercept, I need to look at this spot here on the graph where the yellow and the blue cross. All right, I don't want to look down here where the red is, because that red is called the x-intercept. Okay, so I don't want this spot. That's a no-no. I want this spot here. All right, and you can see from that spot that my y-intercept is +2. All right, now to calculate the slope, I need to use this formula. All right, and this formula looks like this. It's called y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. All right, now the best way to do these questions is to label your diagram, label your coordinates. Okay, so I have a coordinate set down here, and then I have a coordinate set up here. And coordinates are always made out of an x value and a y value. All right, so I'm going to be using quite a lot of colors here, so hopefully you can follow along. Okay, so I'm going to call this one x1, y1. If you wanted to call it x2, y2, it's fine. Usually the first ones I like to just label both of them ones. Now, if you want to call it x2 and y2, that's perfectly fine. You'll still get the same answer. Okay, but what you can't do is call one x1 and then call the other one y2. Okay, I can't do that. That's the only thing I'm not allowed to do. They can both be ones or they can both be twos. Okay, so those are x1, y1s, which means the ones down here are going to be x2 and y2. All right, so from here, I just need to look at my formula and try to match the numbers. Okay, so y2 is -2. So my formula here is going to be -2. The formula is minus, so it has to be a minus here. Y1, which is 6. Divided by x2, which is down here again. Minus, because that's the formula, x1. And x1 here is a negative number. So I just got to remember that when I have a minus and a negative number, I need to put the negative number in a bracket like this. All right, so when I calculate this, -2 minus 6 is -8. And then on the bottom, it's 2 minus -2, and that turns into a 4. All right, now all I got to do on the calculator is try to divide it. If it's a whole number, I write that answer out. If it's a fraction, I just leave it as a fraction. All right, so in this question, it's -8 divided by 4, which gives me -2. And that is the answer of my slope. Okay, so I'm going to write down here -2 for my slope. Now that I have the slope and the y-intercept, I can just write my equation out. Okay, so it's going to be y equals -2x plus 2. All right, and that is how you find out an equation based on coordinates and a line.